So is it that we have to obey the Sharia when the ruler tells us to obey? And he calls this imtithal al-qanun, like obeying the law. So you have laws and you should obey. Is that what it means? Or is the ta'ah the person of the ruler? So is it the rule of law or is it the rule of the ruler? And then is this obedience tujibu amruhu fil jaiz, is it necessary in permissible things if they're maslaha, if they're beneficial? And is it prohibited to go against that? These are questions he's asking. And what's its reality? What's its haqiqah? What's the reality of it? And then what are the consequences of that reality? What follows from it? What are the things owing to it? Or is there a different type of obedience, which is sadda dhari'a, it's to protect, it's cutting off pretext of fitna and civil war, ihtirab, civil wars, and especially given the value that Islam holds for the shedding of blood. Blood is very, very valuable in the Islamic tradition. Or is it a negative type of obedience? In other words, that we simply don't oppose the ruler, and it's not a positive obedience that we have to do what he says. In other words, we don't go against the ruler. Or is it look at the time and the place? ليحقق في المناط من خلال الوثائق الدستورية. So, تحقيق المناط, the usuli scholars, these scholars of Islamic law, have different types of approach to situations. So they have, takhrij, tanqih, and tahqiq. The manat is the contingency of taklif. It's where you're responsible. So for instance, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has two discourses. He has what's called khitab al-taklif and khitab al-wada'. Khitab al-taklif is, for instance, aqimu salah. Allah says, establish a prayer. Al-amr yadulu ala al-wujub. When Allah commands you to do something, it means obligation, unless there's an indication that it's not. Like kulu wa sharabu. That's imperative. Eat and drink. Obviously, when you're hungry, eat. It's mubah, right? Eat and drink. Wala tusrifu. It's for nadab. Don't do it to excess. So it's mandub not to eat or drink to. It's makruh to do it excessively. If it's excessive to the point of harm, it becomes haram. So if you have diabetes, the doctor tells you don't eat sweets. That's ta'ayyana alayk. Because sometimes a legal ruling applies to ashkhas, but not to the society. These are points of difference. So the khitab at-taklif, which is the divine discourse to individual. So if you ask me, is the prayer an obligation? Your average Muslim is going to say, absolutely, it's wajib. If you ask an usuli scholar, is the prayer an obligation? They'll say that depends. Are you a Muslim? Have you reached maturity? Are you menstruating? Do you have access to water or earth? So they're going to look at it differently, right? Because this is called taklif, this is called khitab al-wada'. So the taklif says you have to pray. The wada' determines the situation of whether you have to pray or not. This is the distinction. Wada' is three things: asbab, shurut, and mawani'. So it's got the asbab. So the point the sun reaches 90 degrees, according to Ibn Arafah in his hudud, 1 degree away from 90 degrees. So the sun moves 1 degree away. That's 4 minutes it takes to move 1 degree away. At the point it reaches 91 degrees, dhuhr has become an obligation. It's a sabab for wujub salat al-dhuhr. That's the sabab. So now, before dhuhr, your taklif al-wada' said you can't pray dhuhr. There was a mana'. There was a preventative. It was saying it's not dhuhr time, therefore you can't pray dhuhr. So if you prayed dhuhr when it was at 89 degrees, your prayer is invalid. Because even though the khitab al-taklif, the discourse of obligation says dhuhr is wajib, it has conditions. It has asbab, it has shurut, and it has mawani'. One of the shurut is that you have to be tahir. That's a condition. So the mani' is that you don't have tahara. So I can't pray because I'm not in wudu or I'm not in ghusl. So that's wada', that's your situation. Every legal ruling has a khitab taklif and a khitab wada'. Shaykh Abdullah bin Bayyah says that one of the greatest crises in our ummah is splitting these two. So people say jihad is wajib, tayyib, but it has asbab, it has shurut, and it has mawani'. So if you're going to kill yourself and it's suicidal, jihad is haram. Because Allah prohibits suicide. لا تلقوا بأيديكم إلى التهلكة. لا تقتلوا أنفسكم. إن الله كان بكم رحيما. ففي هذا الوضع لا يجوز يحرم عليكم الجهاد. If you have somebody conquers you and they have nuclear weapons and you don't have nuclear weapons, سقط الجهاد. Because they'll annihilate you and Allah is not telling you to get annihilated. He's saying, convert them to Islam, and then they become weapons for the Muslims. At least try to convert them. That's what the Muslims did with the Mongols. The Mongols invaded and they said, you know what? They actually, if you read T.B. Arnold's book on the preaching of Islam, he said that the ulama got together and said, you know what? We can't defeat these people. They're too powerful militarily. The Muslims have gotten weak. You know, we're supposed to prepare because we believe in deterrence. Look at deterrent. Deterrent, you know, لِتُرْهِبُوا عَدُوَ اللَّهِ وَعَدُوَكُمْ irhab. They think irhab is terrorism. No, the irhab here is deterrent. What does deterrent mean in English? De terrere, out of fear. A deterrent prevents people from attacking you because they're afraid of you. That's what the Muslims want. They don't want to terrorize others. They want others to be afraid of terrorizing them. And now we've switched it. We've made Islam look like terrorism, when Islam should look like a deterrent. That's the irhab of Islam. It's to frighten people from attacking. Be strong. Like, it's a very American idea. Teddy Roosevelt walked home and carry a big stick so people don't mess with you. That's the idea. It's not to go around picking on people or bullying people like some countries do because they have big sticks. No, it's to have a big stick so other countries don't terrorize you. So this is what Shaykh Abdullah is saying, that we have to restore the integrity of the khitab al-wada' and the khitab al-taklif, to bring them back together, to recognize when the shurut are there, when the asbab are there, when the mawani' are there. There are mawani' to jihad. The Prophet ﷺ, he sent people, right? He went out, his last ghazwa, right? When he went out to Tabuk and he realized, because there were rumors that they were going to attack the Muslims. So he got an army together, he went out, we're going to defend ourselves. Jihad, defend. When he got there, he realized, they're not trying to attack us. No fighting. He went back home. If they don't want to attack you, he said, "Utrukuhum ma tarakukum." You know, the Turks, leave them alone as long as they leave you alone. Because he knew ulul bas, right? Sayyidina Umar didn't want to fight the Turks because they were powerful people. Don't mess with the Turks, right? But if they mess with you, you have to mess with them. That's Malcolm. You know, Malcolm used to say, you know, our religion is that good old time religion. You know, treat people with respect. But if they lay their hand on you, send them to the cemetery. Right? That's Islam. And if you can't send them to the cemetery, try to convert them to your religion. You know, or call them to their highest principles, the better angels of their nature. Don't you believe in equality? Don't you believe in democracy? Don't you believe in the rights of people to self-determination? Don't you believe all these things? Why are you forcing your laws on us? Why are you telling us your culture is the only culture? I mean, this is one of the arrogances of the West. You see, the West, when they were Christians, they wanted everybody to be Christian. Now they don't really believe in Christianity, so they want everybody to be capitalists and consumers. They used to be against homosexuality, and they would punish homosexuality wherever they went. The Muslims oddly enough, were far more tolerant of, transvestites. There's a whole tradition of transvestites in the Muslim world. There was a period where, one of the caliph's mothers used to dress up the girls as boys. These things this is just human history. If you read human history, one of the things that shocked me when I was studying Arabic literature was what were called the ghulamiyat. All of these hebephilic poetry, which was homoerotic poetry. I thought it was very weird, but homosexuality's been around for a long, long time, but nobody permitted it. So you had, in the Muslim world, you had these mukhannathun that go to weddings. They still do it in India and Pakistan and Mauritania. Even in Mauritania, you've got these, they dress up like women and they talk funny and people laugh. They're like comedians, like Dame Edna or something. But when the Christians came, you persecuted those people, right? Like the khuntha, the hermaphrodite. Muslims always had fiqh, specialty for transgender people. There was fiqh for those people. But now they don't believe in their book anymore, so they want to force everybody to accept their idea of marriage. We've redefined marriage, and the whole world has to accept it. This is the ethnocentric nature of this civilization. It's a very arrogant civilization. I come from it, so, it's a very arrogant civilization, and unfortunately also there's a lot of arrogance in Muslims as well, because they believe that a lot of Muslims think their will should be imposed on everybody else. It's not our sharia. People can do what they want. In a Muslim society that's ruled by Muslims with an agreement, a social contract with Muslims. And democracy even is what they call the tyranny of the majority. But when the majority of Muslims want certain laws, they say, oh, no, can't have that. Why not? Because we don't agree with it. But I thought you said democracy is what the majority want. Only if it's what we want, our majority wants. Anyway, these are the problems. So he says about this, so that's the tahqiq, all right, of manat. It's determining, does the ruling apply in this specific situation? And this is what the usuli scholar has to do, which is why Imam al-Qushayri said the usuli scholars are the generals of our civilization. They're the generals. Hum quwwad al-ummah. Right? The faqih is like the administrator. The muhaddith is like the khazan. He's the one that protects the treasures. Right? And the qurra, they protect. But the usuli is the general. He's the one that strategically determines what's the appropriate thing. إقامة الحدود تختص بالإمام. To establish hudud, this is a qaida fiqhiyya. It's a legal principle in our tradition. Establishing penal punishments in Islam is specific to the ruler. The ruler can suspend penal punishments based on ijtihad. Like Umar radiallahu anhu during Am al-Ramada, he stopped any punishment for theft because there was so much widespread suffering that people were stealing food to feed their children. So he saw that the hukm in this case is not to apply the hukm. That's tahqiq al-manat. Haqq al-manat. Because he said there's a mani'. There's something here to prevent the establishing the ruling, which is darura, necessity. People are doing this out of necessity, and necessity permits the impermissible. Even in Christianity, St. Thomas Aquinas said theft is permissible if somebody's starving to death and nobody will feed them charitably. In Christianity, Catholic canon law, that a person can steal food if nobody will feed them and they're starving. So they pass by a bakery, they break the window, they take the bread. They have a right. Because haqqul inqad, the right to have your life saved, that's a human right. If you see somebody drowning and you know how to swim, by sharia, it's an obligation to attempt to save them. It's a haqq that person has over you. Haqqul inqad.